Good afternoon, just could be good night, just depending on where you're at, but just want to welcome you to today's AI Consortium session. So with today's session, I thought we would just kind of deep dive into some things that are, have changed recently with Clay and with Instantly. But again, this is a pretty small group. I know we're recording, right? But, there's a lot of note takers on. But I'd say it probably looks like maybe just about 10 actual people. So let's make sure that if you have questions, please ask. Like, let's make this as interactive as possible. I mean, you've taken the time to be here. I'm here. So anything we want to talk about, I'll cover a few of these things. But, I can see the chat. If you have a question, just unmute yourself and ask, or feel free to, just roll with putting a message in the chat. So let me start by sharing the screen here, and let's talk about specifically the change that Instantly just announced. So I thought this was pretty cool. We'll give a little background here, but with Instantly specifically, they've done a little bit with AI up to this point. So if you are, kind of in Instantly at any point, and you want to look at leads, you can create a list, you can add leads, however you want to do it. You can pull in leads different ways, right? So you can upload a CSV, you can do lead finder. There's a lot of different ways to pull in leads with Instantly, right? And then with that capability as well, right, as you pull in leads, they have there's some built-in AI, right? And let me see if I can remember where it is. But they have where you can call, their AI tool. So, I don't know how well people use that. I mean, it was connected to GPT, and I'm sure it worked great. So again, I'm not speaking to the good or bad, but it didn't really give us the option to do a lot of hyper personalization when it came to AI. And so what I wanted to do is kind of introduce their new release and just kind of show everybody. This just came out in the last day or two, and so I tested it this morning. Thought it was pretty interesting, so I just figured, hey, let's share it with you. I guess kind of the nice thing about it I noticed is that it's not using GPT. I read up on a little bit, and essentially what they've done is, obviously they've sent a lot of emails, right? I don't know, I think there are 30, 40,000 clients that they've got. I've sent, 500,000 myself. So I know they have a lot of data to work with, right? And they can obviously see from that perspective, what type of copy, what type of, responses are generating responses, right? What number of sequences, et cetera. So in the read up I did, it basically looks like what they say is that they're not using AI to do this. But they are, they're using some variation of AI, right? But this is not going out like in Clay and pulling hyper enriched information. This is creating campaigns and sequences based off what they have trained their AI to say that's going to work. So pretty interesting concept. I mean, they definitely have the data. Until people actually use it and send campaigns on it, we won't know how effective it is. But I just wanted to show it to you because I thought it was pretty cool. And it's built into their platform. So if we wanted to do this, what we could do is go to this is the campaign. I just my campaign, a couple sections there. This campaign, there's nothing going on. So if you notice when I come to sequences, right, if you're familiar with Instantly at all, they have, the sequence. This is where you write your emails, right? So once you've loaded your leads in there, you choose your subject line, you choose your copy, and then you would add different sequences and steps, right? So what's new in here, if you scroll down to where it says AI generator, you're going to see the option to generate a sequence. And so we're just going to choose my company as an example. We'll just say content marketing media. And we're going to hit continue. So the first thing it does, it says, let's generate a new sequence. What are the details of your offer? So I'm going to just make one up here and say, I sell social media services to small businesses. We offer, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok management. We also offer ad creation for these platforms at a reasonable price. All right. Could you imagine how bad that would be if I type slow? All right, so we're gonna hit continue, right? So we're just gonna answer, did I follow the instructions? 3 to 4 sentences. 1, 2, 3. Okay, cool. So the next sentence says, who is your target audience, right? So we're gonna say small businesses, just to make it easy. And then mention 1 or 2 case studies or an impressive result. So we're gonna make these up. We're gonna just say, I generated 50 new leads for a small HVAC company in 1 week. And then we're going to say we created 10 new customers for I can't spell restaurant. Let's just say, I don't know, building maintenance company. Obviously, I can't spell maintenance either. In London. All right. Obviously, if you were going to do this for real, you probably want to be a little bit more specific than that. But we're just trying to see how good it is, right? So we're going to hit continue. And then this is a good question. So before I hit the answer, there's one thing I wanted to take the time, to talk about here. And I thought about this when I was playing around with this earlier, right? I don't think people pay enough attention to the number of steps in their sequence, right? So, that seems somewhat inconsequential at some point, but at the end of the day, how many steps are in your sequence? Number one is how many emails your lead is going to get, right? Especially if anywhere along the way, they don't tell you to stop. So I think it's important to kind of consider that. There are people that believe in sending 7, 10, 15 steps. The number one thing, right, is that's obviously going to reduce costs, right? So if you are going to send 1,000 emails a day and each lead was only going to get 1 email, you would need 20,000 email leads a month if you were going to send just Monday through Friday. That's 5 times 4, 20 times 1,000, 20,000. Now, if you're going to send 3, that number is now 20,000 divided by 3, right? So 6,666. So that's one factor I think it's important to point out, is that leads in sequence determines really how many net new leads you need every month, depending on your sending capacity. And then the second thing is how much do you want to piss people off? So if you send 2 or 3, I think you're fine. You start getting in the 5 to 7 and they're not interacting with you. Now there's plenty of conventional wisdom, don't get me wrong, that will say there will always be someone that raises their hand and said, I closed the deal on the 7th email. And yes, that's true. There are all kinds of newsletter services, for example, where, a subscriber list where, and I have one as well, where there's, you do send an email to someone 35 times. I've closed a deal off the 35th email, but that's not cold email. So I think it's important to think about as you make this decision. And again, we're just highlighting this capability here, but the number of leads you have in your sequence is important. I always recommend no more than 3. But to be fair, if you have a very small TAM, for example, you have a hyper personalized focused lead gen list that you acquired somewhere, that there's only a small portion of that, maybe you need to extend that out a little bit. But just thought it was a good talking point, of how many steps in the sequence really matters, because for most people, they put forth their best effort on the first email and then it goes downhill from there. So if you're sending 5, 6, 7, and you didn't get their attention on at least the first or second, like what is your true likelihood of, just your return on investment and your sending capacity, right? And so back to that 1,000, every day, if 200 people are getting new emails and 800 people are getting email 6 and 7, what is the likelihood you're truly generating new leads when you could be sending, 800 or 900 emails net new a day versus, 100 or whatever number you choose on sequence, anything beyond 3. So just thought I'd talk a little bit about that. I think it's important. I think it's kind of often overlooked when I talk to clients, and we look at the sequences, and email 1 is the best effort, but it gets somewhat worse from there for most people. All right, so we're going to generate, and let's see how well this comes out, right? So what do we notice right away, right? So they've got some spend tax built in, right? You see that right here? Random, hi, hey, hello, hey there, first name. I noticed company name is doing great work in the industry space. So a couple things you got to think about here, right? Is I think this is okay. The random hi, hello, hey there. I don't know. I don't like hey there, so I probably wouldn't say hey there, but totally up to you. First name is good. I noticed, so right away, if you're going to use this, you need to be injecting the company name into your lead gen, right? Otherwise, this is going to be a blank value. And it's going to say, I noticed blank is doing something great. And industry too, right? So these are 2 components that, depending on where you're pulling your lead data from, you may or may not have. So just something to pay attention to. We recently helped small HP company generate leads, our social media services. Okay. So from my perspective, like, this copy looks like every other piece of copy I would get from somebody selling social media services, but it's not bad. I mean, especially if you've never written copy before. I mean, it's not horrible. It's not, I like the spend tax, I like the injection of some values. And then the follow-up sequences are pretty kind of boring. I would say stay away from words like touch base. They use this type of terminology like touch base. I would never write an email that say, I would stay away from things like following up. And this is just a kind of a good opportunity, right? I know that that's common language for people. I use it too. The challenge is from a receiver perspective, right? I like to teach people to think about the person receiving the email. We're all the ones writing it. We're all married to what we're selling. We're all biased to what we're selling. When we put ourselves in the persona of the person that's receiving the email, following up is just a good example of a situation where that is a trigger for a lot of people for a salesperson, right? Just following up. Like, most of the time when your significant other reaches out and you didn't do something, they're going to be like, why didn't you do this? Or what's going on? What's the delay? They're not going to say, I was just following up on, the lawn I asked you to mow. So maybe, I mean, again, it's not all inclusive, but the point is that, look for things, if you think of the concept of, there are definitely known words that are spam triggers, right? So free, never put the word free in an email. And there's a whole list of things that Google, Microsoft use to automatically push you to spam. Following up is not one of those words, right? But it is one of those words that you get an email when someone says, I'm following up, or, checking in or touching base. Again, I like the words. I'm not picking on the words. I'm just telling you they trigger a psychological response in people where they immediately think this is just another sales thing, right? So just be conscious of that. Overall, my initial evaluation of this is it's not bad. It's definitely very templated, right? So you can clearly tell on the left here, you can update things, you can change things. I mean, I can't speak to whether or not these type of results really get results, or these type of copies really get results. The spend tax piece is nice. You can obviously change stuff here and regenerate. You can use this sequence, and you can see on the screen right here is that it is pretty cool how it just drops it right in the campaign. And if you use the preview mode, you can actually see right here what it looks like. Obviously, I don't have a lead in there, so you're not seeing their first name. But from an efficiency perspective, it's definitely pretty cool. So I'm interested to test this more and just kind of see what works and what doesn't work. But I think it's a good start, right? So before I go on, Looks like I've got a few more people on here. No new comments in the chat, but while I'm here, are there any just pure questions about instantly setup campaigns, anything like that anybody wants to talk about before I go on to Clay? Nobody?
I got one, real quick. I got one.
Somebody is talking, but I can't hear you. Like I hear a.
You hear me?
Nick, is it you, Nick? Maybe try a little louder.
Yeah. Let me see if I can turn the mic up here. Can you hear me now?
A little bit. Yeah, I can hear you enough where I can respond to you. So go for it.
One thing also on Instantly, I've been there for a while, as you have as well. The other thing I just recently did, and maybe just to highlight, is purchasing domains. It worked really well, and it took, I don't know, it took 24 hours, if that. It took maybe 16 hours, but I purchased domains, and it was super quick. So that's just something.
That's what.
Everything was set up. It was such. It's so easy. It's a great new tool.
Yeah, so let's see if I haven't done it yet. So let's see if I can find it here. It's probably here, I would assume. No. I'm just trying to see if I can. Oh, there you go. Email account. Okay, so that's where they live. Do you remember where you went? I haven't actually done it, Nick. So do you remember where you went to get it?
You know what? I don't remember exactly. I can pull up another screen here and see.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, you would think it'd be simple, but
I know I think it's if you go into new account, let's see. I'm trying to do it at the same time.
you're exposing my lack of expertise and claiming I'm an instantly expert, Nick. While we're doing that, I saw a question. I saw a question for Allison. If you can tell me where to go. I've seen the visuals of it. I just haven't actually gone in the campaign into it. But if you see it, let me know.
Let me mute out and then
Okay. Yeah, and put it in the chat for me, Nick. That way I can see it because I still can barely kind of hear you. I did want to take a question from Allison. So. Yeah, so Allison's question in the chat, I think it's a great question, is what is your take on reviewing outputs of AI at scale, specifically in relation to errors, right? So can you review or do you accept there may just be some hiccups? And that is actually a great question because I've encountered that a lot. So I'll talk about that. We can kind of walk through that. The answer is yeah. I mean, I think we're close with getting some level of consistency with AI. There's definitely some errors that come out. And part of what I was going to cover today, specifically in Clay, is how to use formulas. And formulas is how I overcome that by identifying some of those errors. So we'll kind of talk about that today if everybody's cool with that. Okay, let's see. So go to email accounts, add new. That makes sense. All right. So here's what you're talking about, right? So instantly now has a done for you setup. Right. So a couple things that I do know about this. Number one is Microsoft is not quite available yet as a done for you. As you can see, it's grayed out. I will tell you, and this is my professional expert opinion, and I'm not dogging Microsoft by any means, because I've used Microsoft my whole life. You know, my kids probably have more Xboxes than Toys R Us used to keep in stock. Microsoft deliverability right now from all aspects of very reputable high volume senders is really, really bad. And what that means is that multiple people are reporting that they're seeing their Microsoft accounts, and I think I mentioned this last week as well, they're seeing their Microsoft accounts go from completely stable to hitting 20 or 30% bounce rates in one day. So oftentimes, especially in the world of big tech companies, Google is notorious for this. They will make some kind of change not really announce it, and people are affected, right? So let me give you an example of Google, right? Over the last couple months, they have repeatedly taken down websites. When I say take them down, I just mean sunk their traffic from, some of them were 100,000, 200,000 a month, right? So Microsoft appears to be doing the same thing to some extent with cold email. And so that is not my understanding why Instantly has it blacked out, but it is awfully convenient, at least at this point, that the done for you is not applicable to Microsoft, because uh, I will, just a week ago, and I think I shared this in the WhatsApp group, even the founder and CEO of Smartlead talked very specifically on a YouTube video about how they were seeing the same thing. And they have, between Instantly and Smartly, they probably have the most visibility out there, right? So just something to be cognizant of. I'm not telling you, to go ditch all your Microsoft accounts. I'm just saying be aware, right? Because the one thing, when you see something like this, it reminds you of when Zoho basically did the same thing, and nobody sends on Zoho anymore because they'll ban you in 10 minutes. And we're starting to see that behavior of Microsoft. But the one thing they did notice, I guess, the takeaway, and I'll share this with you, is that they were seeing some level of deliverability success as long as there was no HTML in the email, and very specifically as long as you weren't tracking open rates. So if you have Microsoft accounts now and you don't want to just get rid of all that money you spent to acquire them, at a very minimum, I would not have any HTML in the emails, and then I would definitely not be tracking opens. So, okay, Nick, to your point, right? So you can come in, we'll just pick done for you, set up a G Suite. And then the first thing you get to do is type in the domain. So we'll just say, I want to open a business called Happy People in Arizona, which is where I'm at. Be nice if I could spell. All right, so what this does is it tells me what domains are available, right? So guess what? happypeopleinArizona.com is available. That's pretty awesome. So I'm going to pick that. It tells me that costs $15. So I'm going to hit next. And obviously before I go forward, you can see, I guess I backed out. So let's try again. Doesn't like the fact that I went backwards. And so it looks like I could pick obviously more than one. I would personally recommend not picking .coms. I mean, .orgs, excuse me. I would always pick .coms. So those are all different options right there. And let's just say I wanted to pick those four. We'll go to that. And then now it looks like it's giving me some options where I want to forward these emails. So another trick, right? Just make sure that when you do this, that you always want to have your emails domains forwarded to your main domain, right? So one of the things I think people fail to realize is that when you get an email from someone you don't know, generally what you're going to do, especially if they don't have a link in there, right? Because that's HTML. If you have a link in there, you don't have a link in there, for example, I want to see who you are before I go respond to one of your cold emails, right? So often what we'll do is, if this was your email address, I'd go look up happypeopleinArizona.com, and I'd do that by cutting and pasting that in the URL. So in the browser here. So we want this to forward to whatever my main website is. So if it's happypeopleaz.com, that's my main website. We want all these subdomains to forward, right? So just something to think about. But you can see here, you can choose your provider. It gives you some naming conventions as well. It tells you they're $5 per email, which is monthly, by the way. And so you can see the total price here is $60 for the domains, $60 for the email accounts, and then you can place your order. So looks pretty straightforward, 24 to 72 hours for propagation. And then I know as well that they're going to go in there and map that to Instantly, obviously. And so they're going to do the DNS, the DMARC, and all that, right? So a lot of benefits to that service, just so you kind of have an idea there. But I would tell you there are other services, right? There are other vendors that do this as well. And so again, this is new into Instantly. I love the convenience of the service, right? I love the ability that I could change, If I wanted to change the naming conventions as well, I could do that. But at the end of the day, you gotta figure out what works for you. And if you want to use another service, you can do that. And roll with whatever makes sense and what's comfortable for you. All right, let's pause there and see what questions are out there before we move on again from this. All right, and conveniently, our lawn guy is right outside my window, so hopefully you guys don't hear that too much. All right, so let's talk about clay for a minute, and let's move into the details of what we want to do with clay today. So I'm going to create a new table, and we're just gonna do a blank table, right? Because I want to talk about just a couple different things here. And so let me get that pulled up here. All right, so when you use a lot of data in clay, you're going to have the opportunity to kind of, I think Allison asked a question specifically earlier about AI. Like, how do you manage AI? So I'm going to walk through some sample scenarios there and talk about that as well. Great question, just to lead me into kind of what I was going to talk about anyway. But we're going to take about 10 or 15 minutes and build this table from scratch, just so that everybody can kind of see, like, there's a lot of ways to go about different things in clay. You could obviously import your data. You can be connected to different tools, but I want it to be just a little bit more organic today and kind of create things from scratch, just so we can see what the options are. So the first thing we're going to do is we'll just use me, so we don't dox anybody. Do Josh at contentmarketingmedia.io, and we'll fill out the columns correctly here. And then let's see. What's my LinkedIn? I don't even remember I know what the handle is, but let's see. Let's grab it real quick here, just to make it real. There's my LinkedIn. All right. So we'll just go through a couple basic things, right? So if this is all we started with, we could obviously just go in and enhance this LinkedIn profile to get a little bit more information about me. So this will cost a clay credit, but let's just do it. So personal, sometimes I don't even remember what it's called, right? So I have to Google it. So find person, or search for it, find person from LinkedIn. Let's see, enrich person from profile. There it is, right? And then what's my identifier? It's my LinkedIn profile. And then we're going to add that field. So here are all the different options that I could get very specifically from this output. So let's just confirm my name. What's my title? Do I have any experience? And it doesn't matter how many fields you choose, right? I mean, you can choose as many fields as you want. This just means you're going to get all this data anyway, but it just means it comes out in the column. So let's run it and see what happens. This is going to cost us 1 clay credit. And we should get, as long as I put in my LinkedIn profile there correctly, we should get a little bit of results, right? So there's me, there's my LinkedIn profile, my job title, my experience, is my current employer. Just, these are some of the random columns I picked, right? If you're not sure what columns you want, you just want to run it, you can come in here and look at all of the columns that are included, right? So here's all this. I need to win some awards, so that number is not 0. Projects, connections, on and on and on, right? So these are all the different columns. Anytime you see this little arrow, it just means it's nested. The value is nested. So here's a couple, that are nested there. My experience is nested, right? So this is all more data you could pull in, right? So if we wanted to do any kind of level of personalization, I think this is a pretty good field, right? It's my summary. So let's just add this and use that, right? So I like this summary. I don't like having all these tables. So now that I decided uh, that I'm not going to use these, there's a lot of things I could do, but we'll just leave them in there for sake of time. But I could hide them, I could delete them, etc. Right? So here is what we have so far. We got a name, we got my email, which maybe we didn't have. There's all kinds of ways to go about it, but we'll just assume we have it. And we now have information about me from LinkedIn. So the next thing we're going to do is let's take a different, let's assume we have a different data source here. So we're going to add just text. And I don't know, did we pull in, let's go back to LinkedIn for a second. Did we pull in my company name, right? I don't know if we did. So, because that would be a good one to kind of talk about here. So let's look at, that's my title. Jobs count, projects, experience. All right. So let's pull a few of these. There's my company name, right? And this is my, if you notice when I look at experience, this is my most recent. So we're just going to add, this is a column. So now we have my company name. Because what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to use formulas to kind of pull together two different data sources, right? So obviously these both came from LinkedIn, but in this example, it could be either. Like I could have data from, the news or stored leads or wherever you want to pull data from. But maybe you want to look at two different data sources at the same time. In this example, we have one data source, but we have a lot of different information. So we'll talk about that in a second. So we're just going to say, we're going to edit this column and I'm trying to think what I want to do here. So let's do a formula, right? So let's start off with formula. So let's say we want to combine, actually, let's make this a little bit more interesting. We know my company, right? So let's get some information about my company. So, because, I know the company, but maybe you don't know anything about content marketing media. So we want to learn a little bit more about that. So let's go browse enrichments. We'll go company and we'll just do enrich company. And it automatically fills that in. So yeah, that was kind of nice, right? It identified that. So let's run it. Let's learn more about the company. So let's get the industry. Let's get their website. Yeah, we can pull in some other ones, but those are the only ones that I think we should have a summary here too, right? Description, right? So let's pull that in. I'm going to run that. We should get a little bit more information about the company. All right, so now we see there's the company, the services we provide, not pretty generic, our website. Okay, we got industry, technology, information, internet. Okay, so we have a little bit more information now. We got company and we have person information, right? So think about a scenario where this would be applicable, right? Imagine, for example, that you were sending to a big company and it's a large company and they have multiple people in different roles, different roles, or maybe even the same role, right? In that instance, we teach a lot about company personalization, rolling through the website and everything else. It might not be that valuable to hyper target them solely based on their company. Because at the end of the day, if there's 5,000 whatever at that company or 500 whatever at that company, then you might need to get a little bit more creative in how you personalize. So maybe you want to combine personalization from a personal level, like talking about what you identify in their LinkedIn and the company. Maybe you just want to do just what you identify for them through their LinkedIn profile versus just their company. But to show you a little bit how we can use formulas, we are going to actually do a little bit of both, right? We're going to combine that and we'll pull that all the way through into a prompt. So let's use a little formula and we're going to say add formula. And so I will tell you, in my personal opinion, this is the most underutilized tool within Clay. So number one, it's free, right? You're not paying to run formulas. I have seen people ask GPT, OpenAI to do certain things in their prompts and they're paying sometimes 1 cent per row and doing 10,000 at a time. So try to use a formula first, because there hasn't been much I've asked it to do that it couldn't do. So let me give you an example. This little slash, I don't know if you can see it here on the screen. Do it again. This little slash, what it does is it brings up all your columns. And as you do that, a couple things you should know, right, is that always preview what's in there. So you see how this is a nested value right here? This is where I ran the LinkedIn enrichment. I can drill into all of that data as well, right? So pretty important to spend the time and be like, oh, maybe I should pull that. Just because it's not displayed, that's an important thing to know. Well, I didn't pick all these tables. You look at kind of above up here, I only have 20 columns. There's like 20 right here alone, right? So even within some of these, there's even further nested items. So don't always give up. Like, I know we paid 2 clay credits here, one for the company information, one for the personal information. There's data in here you can use, right? These can all be columns in your table. So let's dive a little deeper here. And let's say, okay, in this example, I want to know the company description. So see, there's an example. And then I want that plus the personal description. So let's see what personal description I want here. That's company. So let's do a nested one here. And we have a summary there. There you go. All right. So, and remember, one of the things you can do if you want to, for future's sake, remember exactly what these columns are, you could label them differently, right? So they don't have to be called description and summary. You can just go in and change them. But the nice thing, again, is you can hover over there. So very, very simple formula. And I'm going to hit generate. And as you can see, it's giving you, and it's kind of hard to see in the preview, but the output is a combination of both. So let's look at it. And here we go. You look at it. I've now combined both. Right? So you notice the we, this is the we, this is the I, right? So this is my description, the company description. So now in that, go back to that use case we were talking about a minute ago. If I wanted to do personalization based off specifically 2 different approaches, one is a company approach, one is a personal approach, right? I could do this and use this as, my research, right? Versus, using just the company information, using just the personal information, right? So let's add a few more leads here, just to see what happens when maybe we don't have that information. So we're going to do Sam. I'm not going to worry about his email and all that because I don't really know that's his email. But Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI. We're going to do Steve Jobs, who is obviously not at Apple anymore, but just for sake of argument, we're going to do Sam. I don't care about their emails. I'm not really going to email them. I don't even know. It'd be ironic. I don't know if Steve even has a LinkedIn profile, but we're going to try to find out. So let's see. I don't know if either one of them have a LinkedIn profile. Sam's got a lot of pictures, but he doesn't have a LinkedIn profile. So, yeah, the hard part is this. I'm trying not to dox anybody. So this is a good example. Let's just say neither one of these people have a LinkedIn profile. Well, we know Apple and OpenAI have company profiles. So that's cool because this is going to prove my example, right? Is what we're trying to show is, from the first example, if you have one, it works. You can combine them, but let's just say you don't have both, right? So we'll just say OpenAI. I should put retired here, but we'll put Apple. And then let's see, what do I need to enrich this column? We need the company identifier. So we don't have their personal profile. We have a name, right? And what are our ideal scenarios? Company LinkedIn URL, company domain, sales navigator URL, etc. So what we could do is we could go here and just say Apple. And obviously you would pull this data in from different sources, but here is Apple's company domain. And so let's put, let's add a column. And we'll just call it company domain. Oh, we already have one, but that's okay. And so there is Apple's, and then let's do OpenAI's real quick. All right, so here is OpenAI's. So, all right, now we should be able to enrich these two, right? So let's run them real quick and see what happens. You could enrich them if you mapped them correctly, Josh. So let's map them correctly. And we need to enrich from the company, what do I call it? Company domain? Yeah. All right, and we should be able to run these now. All right, so you see how, we just kind of back-ended to these. Now remember, if you don't remember, in Clay, you can import companies for free. So find companies, choose your list. Depending on what plan you're on, you can do up to 50,000, right? So I'm doing all this manually for a reason, but you can just as easy import company profiles and personal profiles for free. This is something we went over last Thursday. So just if you don't remember that, kind of go back and watch that. But again, company profiles, people profiles, you can import those into Clay up to 50,000. So it gives you a lot of capability to get all this data that we just got made. Moving on. So we have descriptions now. We don't have a summary because remember, this is from the personal one, right? But you remember we have a formula over here that says, combine both, right? So that's not really well named. So we'll just call it combine company and people. That's cool for now. And so now if we look at this, right, it only has half the information. So it doesn't have, this is just a company information. Again, here's the company information, right? So what I want to do is say, how would I dynamically use this information, right? So I've kind of cut to the chase and made it a little bit easier because I wrote a formula right here. But if I was going to create copy, for example, so let's browse enrichments, let's just use AI, and let's use ChatGPT, and we'll kind of do it how I would do it. I definitely use GPT 4.0, and we'll just say, here's the prompt, right? So this is totally ad hoc, but we're going to say review, and we're going to look for the first column. So the first column is description, and create a 2-paragraph email selling, or we'll just use what we sold earlier, social media services. Be professional. Don't try to be funny. All right. You need to spend a little bit more time on it, obviously, but let's just run this and see what happens. Social media pitch, that's what it's called, right? Pretty quickly, we should get an output, assuming I did everything right. And we've, if we kind of backtrack while this is running, we've gone from, pulling in LinkedIn personal profiles, pulling in company profiles, and we're going to look at the output of one versus the other, which is why I'm doing this, right? So if you look, some of these have already completed, and this is going to help out answer Allison's question, but it's not bad. I mean, you can kind of tell it's, it's GPT-4 Omni, so it's a little bit better at recognizing. If you were to use 3.5 Turbo, this would be much worse. But we have a subject line, right? I would prompt it not to give me the subject line. I would tell it just give me the body. I would tell it not to give me the intro as well. But the middle paragraphs aren't horrible, right? I don't like, this injection here of company name. So I'd work on fixing that in the prompt. But there's some pretty professionally written emails from a very, very basic prompt, right? Now, I don't know why that one's taking so long, but let's do another one. And this time we're just gonna, actually, if I can get it to work. So we're gonna add AI and generate the same thing, except this time we're going to say, write an email to, and we're gonna start off by saying company name. Look at both the company description and we're going to dive into this table and summary. Now remember, we don't have that for two of people. We don't have the personal summaries because we didn't run the personal LinkedIn profile. So look at both the description and the summary to create a highly personalized introduction. We are selling social media services. Please keep the email to 2 paragraphs. I'm going to say 30 words or less. Don't include a greeting, subject line, or closing. We'll see how well that works. But the point I was trying to get you to see here is that we've now injected multiple values. So we've told it, here's the company name, here's the description, here's the summary of the person, right? So let's make it a little bit smarter and tell it that the summary is specific to the individual that we are reaching out to. And yeah, that's probably good enough. So let's give it a run and see what happens. Again, I want to make sure I'm using GPT-4. As you can tell, I'm using my own API key. And I'll show you in a second why. Because if I did, I have to pay a click credit. I'm using my own, much more cost effective. I'm going to use GPT-4 Omni, because I believe that's the best model right now for writing copy. And let's save and run 3 rows. All right, so let's scroll over here. I have no idea why this one hasn't completed. It's taking a little while. Really, really interesting. But it looks like the first one's done. Yeah, so it did complete. So if you remember the first one, kind of the same thing, pretty general, etc. So now let's see what happens. So what do you notice on the personalized email, right? The second one we created. The first one did complete, but why did the second one or third one not complete? Because we don't have summaries for them, right? So I'm going to show you the first easy trick to fix this, right? Is that, and I see this a lot when I'm looking at people's prompts and they're injecting data. This little button right here, if you turn it off, then you're no longer required to have this, and this will still run, right? So let me prove it to you. We turn off the summary. We're not going to get a summary, and we have another one right here. We're not going to get a summary for anybody but except the first one, right? Because we did not have their personal LinkedIn. So just by making that small little change, we now should get a result for these two. All right, So quickly you see here, we are empowering small businesses, la, la, la. So much more brief, right? You notice it listen to me. There's no intro, there's no closing. So all we have is the body. It's kind of cool. And it's not bad. I mean, this one's pretty brief, probably briefer than I wanted to. So I do some adjustment with the prompts, but for ad hoc, it's not horrible, right? I mean, honestly, this is better than a lot of people I see first stab, right? So again, not bad, but let's get to the, kind of the meat here, right? So what if we just dynamically did this? So we know from this formula, kind of the purpose of this, that we can combine this data, right? So why pull, going back to this one right here, why pull all this in when we've used a formula to do it already, right? So for sake of time, I'm just going to cut and paste this. I'm going to come in here and go add. Actually, you know what? Instead of cut and pasting, let me show you a trick. So anytime, like me, I've spent hours doing this. You write these big complex prompts, right? And you don't have to redo it for every table or anything else. Save the config. So we're going to save the current config. We're going to call it OpenAI GPT 4.0 copy with LinkedIn, person, and company. And I should have put that in the description, so I'm just going to say see above. And we're going to save it as a template. That will save you so much time because watch what's going to happen. I'm going to go add column, browse enrichments, AI, generate text. And now I'm going to browse my templates. And there it is. And now all I have to do is tell it what those columns are. And it's like that because it might be different and, in every table. And so rich person. Funny thing is I'm about to delete these columns, but it's okay. Summary, and I'm just kind of filling them in right now. But let's say you have another table and these columns are called something else. That's why this template's important because you can map them to new columns. So you can even see what it looks like in the prompt, right? So I'm going to use the template and now I don't have to recreate that prompt, right? That's what's kind of cool about it. Now I'm not going to use these columns other than company name anymore because if you remember, we did a formula, right? So we're going to say write an email to company, and then let's see, so we don't need to look at two things anymore. We're just going to say look at and what is our formula called? Combined to create a highly personalized introduction. And we're going to clarify this to say, I'm going to delete this column. This is specific to the individual and the company we're reaching out to. And I'm going to try to make it a little smarter and say, try to utilize something very relevant that will resonate. And let's roll. So didn't do much. Another trick is if you get a copy you like and you want it to work that way, I think to Allison's question, and I'll come back and show you in just a second here, but use it in your prompt and it will help create consistency. So while that's running, I wanted to go to kind of the final thing I want to talk about today is how to use formulas to fix the craziness that happens in AI sometimes, right? So I don't necessarily see anything in here that scares me too much. I mean, it's a little shorter than I want, but I'm going to show you just some quick examples why you should be using formulas to kind of help detect the bad AI. So if you remember, I think it's this one, right? See how these brackets are here? I'd never want to send this to somebody, right? Because it's a cold email. I didn't dynamically inject this. You will see this happen on the best of prompts and the best of models. And so we're going to try to detect it with a formula. So let's see if we can do it. look at, let's say review, that's called social media. That's what that column's called, social media something, social media response, right? If, let's just talk to it like a human. Look to see if you can find, I don't know if this is gonna work, but we're gonna try it. So that didn't work because we know it's in one of these, right? Yeah. So it doesn't like that. So let's try to see, find any, and let's give it the exact symbol. Or let's see if that works. Output includes, yeah, all three of them do. So it did find it. So if found, yes. If not, no. So we're just telling it now what to put in the column. We know it found it. So look, it found it. Yes, yes, yes. So I wanted to kind of show like this is the process you go through. If you're using some of the what I've taught in the past around using like Cohere or stuff, you're going to see apologies, right? You're going to see the common thing. It says, "I am sorry, I could not find this. I apologize." So you know what I do is I write prompts and formulas that say if includes the words "I am sorry" or "apologize," then yes. If not, no. Just like I showed you here. But these tricks can save you a ton of time because guess what? You output this like this, and it's going to create a formula column, bracket detection. And now when I have 10,000 of these, all I got to do is filter by the ones that say yes. And I can either fix them, delete them, whatever I want to do. Do this often, like I said, with apology, because that happens a lot with AI research. But yeah, so hopefully today you kind of got a good overview, and we totally did this organically, but just creating a table, pulling in some LinkedIn data, but company personal, using formulas where we have data, creating copy from those formulas. Again, you'd want to spend a lot more time on, different aspects of this, right? Like the prompts, making sure that these are the leads you want. But, you know, just in 30, 45 minutes, we created a table from scratch. We talked a little bit about instantly their changes as well. So I know we only have like 2 minutes left. I didn't see any other comments in the chat, but is there any, God, these note summaries are pretty good. Any final questions that anybody wanted to throw out there before we wrap up for the week? All right. Well, I'm all about giving back time. So thank you everybody for joining. I'll get the recording up. Lynn or I will before the end of the day. And we hope you got some value out of today, and hope you continue, just exploring, and holler if you have any questions. A lot of good discussion again in the WhatsApp group, very technical, very specific. So if you haven't joined, you can get to it pretty easily through the AI consortium. So have a great day, everybody. Thank you.